Hi everyone, welcome to a new video. In this video I will be discussing with you guys latest Java developer interview questions. So I have already created couple of videos on this topic. If you want, you can access the playlist. I will add a playlist link in the description. If you want, you can access the playlist as well. Okay, so now any further delay, let's get started. So this is our first question for this video. So I have already covered first 20 questions in my previous videos, right? What is bean life cycle? Okay, so this is our first question. So life cycle of a bean in Spring refers to the sequence of events that occur from the moment a bean is instantiated until it is destroyed. Okay, so means from the starting to the ending, means when it was like instantiated till it got destroyed, right? So these are the steps. Container started. The Spring IOC container is initialized. Bean instantiated. The container creates an instance of the bean. Dependencies injected. The container injects the dependencies into the bean. Custom init method. If the bean implements initializing bean or has a custom initialization method specified via @post construct or init method. Okay, bean is ready. The bean is now fully initialized and ready to be used. Custom utility method. This could be any custom method you have defined in your bean. Okay, and custom destroy method. If the bean implements disposable bean or has a custom destruction method specified via @predestroy or destroy method, it is called when the container is shutting down. Okay, so if you can remember, in Spring basically we do the configuration in Java configuration, or it can be XML configuration, right? So when we are defining our bean, there you can explicitly mention like what will be your init method or like what will be your destroy method. Okay, this way you can mention. Okay, I think this is the attribute that you have to use in case of when you are working with XML configuration. After init method like this, then you have to mention the method name. Okay, well actually you can mention the method name. This is kind of configuration you can do if you want to explicitly mention your init or like destroy method. Okay, so these are the steps that you have to remember. Okay, but if you want to know more about this topic, you can go through this website. Okay, so I just wanted to making one thing clear, like it will be a quick revision video for you. Okay, if you want to more about any particular topic, you can go through the website that we are mentioning. Okay, or you can go to this website links also if you want to more about the topics. Okay, so this is our second question. What is bean scope or what is default bean scope? Okay, so what is bean scope? So bean scope refers to the life cycle of bean. That means when the object of bean will be instantiated, how long does the object live, and how many objects will be created for that bean throughout. Basically, it controls the instant creation of the bean and is managed by Spring container. Okay, and this is the bean scope we have in Spring. Okay, and like singleton, prototype, request, session, conversation. Okay, and singleton. Okay, and default bean scope is singleton. Okay, so now this is one of the most popular question is like what is the difference between singleton and prototype. Okay, we will discuss that thing also in this video only. Okay, like singleton, what is only one instance will be created for a single bean definition per Spring IOC container, and the same object will be shared for each request made for that bean. Okay, so we are returning the same object every time. This is one point that you have to remember. Okay, prototype, what we are doing in case of prototype scope, like a new instance will be created for a single bean definition every time a request is made for that bean. So what is the difference? Like if you can see, like here where every time we are returning the new instance. Okay, returning the new instance. Okay, every time when we are doing any request. Okay, so now third scope is request. A new instance will be created for a single bean definition every time an HTTP request is made for that bin, okay, but only valid in the context of whatever Spring application context. What is our fourth one is session. Scopes a single bin definition of the life cycle of an HTTP session, but only valid in the context of whatever Spring application context. So basically this depends on the HTTP session. What about the COBOL session? Is a similar kind of session, but like scopes a single bin definition to the life cycle of a COBOL HTTP session. It is also only valid in the context of whatever Spring application context. Okay. So I think this question is also clear. Like these two questions now, that it's a kind of theoretical question that you have to remember these things. Okay. So if you can remember, that will be enough. If you can say at least this kind of point that I am mentioning, that will be more than enough. Okay. So now this is like a descriptor Spring Boot request flow. So like any client is making a HTTP request, okay, the request will come to controller. Okay, now controller to services. What we will have in our services? We are writing down our business logics, right? So in the service itself only we are like dependency injection we are doing for repository class. Okay, repository class Spring we are using, we are auto wiring. Actually if we are saying like dependency injection, so what do we mean by that? Actually we are auto wiring with that particular class. Okay, so we are doing the dependency injection with repository class extending the card services. Okay, it can be a JPS repository, it can be a card repository. Okay, so many options we have. Okay, and also this service layer is connected with the model layer also. Okay, model layer kind of like a employee class we are talking, or like student class, okay, or like any card class, anything. Okay, model. Okay, this model is also connected with the means they are not the connected, they are like linked. Okay, they are linked with the database. Okay, suppose we have a employee class. Okay, in the employee class, if we are annotating with @employee, okay, in the class level, and in the attribute, like we have multiple attributes. Okay, and there will be one attribute that will be a unique identifier. Like suppose in student I have roll number is a unique identifier. So in that particular attribute you have to annotate at @id. Okay, and all the remaining attributes you have to annotate with @column. Okay, this is the thing that you have to remember. Okay, so if you doing this kind of mapping, then you will see the similar kind of table will be created in your database also. Okay, this is something that you have to know. Okay, this is what they are saying like JP or like Spring data. Spring data JP is kind of like we are making the connection with the database and all. Okay, basically we are creating the similar kind of entity we have in our Java. We are creating similar kind of tables in our database. Database can be anything, MySQL or like PostgreSQL. Also many database options we have. But yeah, this is kind of similar thing. I think it is understandable. So I have described the same thing here also. Like first client is making a request, browser or like postman or like any API call. Okay, a client, browser, postman or front-end application etc. sends an HTTP request to the Spring Boot application via a specific URL. Embedded web server Tomcat we have TT or like under Tom. Spring Boot application come with an embedded web server default Tomcat. The web server receives a request on a specified port. Default is 8080, and also you can change this particular port. Okay, in the application.properties file you can change this particular port if you don't want to use the default port. Okay, so passes it to the dispatcher sublet. Okay, dispatcher sublet is like front controller. Spring Boot uses dispatcher sublet which acts as a front controller. It handles all incoming requests and determines the appropriate handler controller for processing. Okay, handler mapping. The dispatcher sublet console handler mapping to identify the correct controller method. Okay, you know na, like @post mapping, @get mapping, we are defining upon a method, right? That method they are like mentioning that matches the request URL or like HTTP method. Okay, now next controller layer we have, like once a suitable controller method is found, Spring Boot invokes it and method processes the request, often using services or like repositories to retrieve or modify the data. Okay, like it can be a get mapping, it can be a post mapping, or like it can be a patch mapping. Okay, depends on that the operation will be done. Okay, then we have service layer. Physical service layer, we are doing all the business logics, or like means we are creating all the business or calculation operation we are doing. Okay, if needed, the controller calls a service layer where business logic is implemented. Okay, and then we have repository class. So database introduction. Okay, I have already mentioned you can extend the JP repository, or you can extend the card repository. Okay, so basically repository interaction with the database. The service layer interacts with the repository layer, which communicates with the database using Spring Data or JDBC. Response mapping. Once the controller method has completed processing, it returns. What it will return, that we have to remember. Okay, first view. Time-lived JSP rendered HTML page if using MVC, Spring MVC we are talking. Okay, so like we are talking about the Spring Boot, right? So then we can consider this one, JSON or XML response if RESTful APIs like activate REST controller, and status codes and headers also, like HTTP status, like it can be a 200 okay message, or it can be the case basing time issue like 500 internet server error, like 404 not found. Okay, there can be many kind of HTTP requests we have that you can use, okay, in your API implementation. So HTTP status and the response headers. Okay, so now next, like view controller for MVC. Okay, it is not required for Spring Boot. If the response is a view HTML page, the view resolver determines the appropriate template to return. Okay, response sent to client. Finally, web server sends the response like JSON, HTML, XML, etc. back to the client to identify the correct controller method that matches the request URL and HTTP method. Okay, this is the whole process that you have to remember. Okay, this is our next question, like why there is no pointer concept in Java. In Java we have references instead of pointers. Okay, so now for more details we will read these answers. Okay, like Java does not support pointers to ensure security, simplicity and portability. By removing direct memory access, Java avoids many bugs and vulnerability associated with pointer misuse. Instead, Java uses references, okay, and automatic memory management. Automatic, what do you mean by automatic? Like we have garbage collection, okay, making it safer and more developer friendly. Like Java has garbage collection, which automatically allocate and reallocate the memory, reduce the memory leaks. Okay, and Java focuses on simplicity and ease of use by providing references instead of pointers. Okay, which acts as save object handles. Okay, so we have this, like we are creating one string reference object. Okay, we are creating one object of string, and this is the reference. Okay, this is not the pointer. Okay, this is the reference. Okay, so Java runs on a JVM, Java Virtual Machine, makes it platform independence. Okay. Write once and read anywhere. Pointer depends on the underlying hardware and OS, making the portability difficult. Okay, so this is our fourth question, right? I think this question is also clear. So now, what is optional class in Java? So, like avoid the null checks, prevent the null pointer exception by explicitly handling the absent values. Okay, encapsulates nullability, clearly expresses the variable may or may not have a value. Function operations, supports functional programming style with methods like map, filter and if present. Okay, so I am providing also some example as a for your reference. Like this is our optional class. Okay, so this is our optional string. So how you can do, like optional dot off and Spring sys out we are doing, and then we are doing optional dot get. Okay, also you can do like optional string, okay, and optional dot of nullable and all. So basically you can explore this part. If interview are asked about like optional class, then you can say okay, we can use optional class, avoids the null checks and also encapsulates the nullability and functional operations. Okay, prevent the null pointer exception by explicitly handling the absent value. Okay, encapsulate the nullability, clearly expresses that variable may or may not have the same value. Okay, functional operation supports the functional programming style with methods like map, filter, and if present. Okay, this is something. Okay, but I will show you one real project example while we actually using optional class. Okay, but before that I'm just giving you one task. Okay, like how we can calculate the unique numbers of a list. Okay, this is like a code. You can write down the algorithm, like how you gonna solve it, or like you can write down the code in Java or like C plus by anything, but you can write down the answer in the comment section. Okay, but there is a catch. You cannot use set. Okay, I know using set is really a simple question, but you cannot use set. Okay, expect set. You can use any kind of collection, or like if you want to use without any collection you want to do, that is also fine. Okay, so I think this question is clear. So now I will show you one example of optional class. Okay, so now let's go to our STS IDE. So I hope my screen is visible to you. So now this is our employee class. Okay, right, so I am just showing you the entity class. This is our employee class. Okay, the same thing I was mentioning na, entity, then ID, then generated value, then column you have to also mention. Generated value is something like how you want to increment your like unique key. Okay, so like it will be incremented by one. It is only saying that. Okay, so now this is not our concern right now. So what I just wanted to discuss with you guys, like this optional class, right? So here now when we are working with Spring Data API or like web applications, we sometimes need to fetch the data based on some IDs. Okay, that we have stored in our database. May possible for the particular ID we don't have any roles or like any reference or like any object we don't have for that particular ID. Okay, there is no employee object present for that particular ID. It may possible it will give you null pointer exception because there is no object is present and you are just trying to access that particular object, so it will definitely give you a null pointer exception. So to avoid that exception you can use this optional class. Okay, because it is optional. We can get an employee object, or may possibly we are not getting any employee object. Okay, so this is what definition you have to mention in your DAO class. Okay, DAO sorry, not it is not a class, it is an interface. Okay, in DAO interface you can define your find by ID method this way. Okay, in the service layer this is kind of same thing, like we are just calling our repository and then we are calling that particular method. Okay, like we are doing the auto adding. Okay, that auto adding thing I have said, like in the service like you have to do the auto add, means you have to do the dependency injection with the repository class. I have mentioned that na in the PPT also we are doing the same thing. Basically it is the dependency injection we are doing. Okay, so what I was saying, like yeah, here we are calling the same method that we have like mentioned here. Okay, and now in the controller we are calling this method. Okay, so now get employee, so it will be a get mapping. Okay, so we are doing get mapping and then you have to define the path. Okay, if you can see here we are specifying one path variable. Okay, so now you can write down the same, like okay, path you have to mention na ID. Okay, and this way you can create your get mapping method. Okay, so now what was my concern was like this way you can return your optional employee object. Okay, this is what. But suppose now you are thinking, okay, but previously we are not using this optional employees and how we are managing it. Actually we have another thing, like if you don't want to use it optional now, there is another option we have, like if you use .get. Okay, if you can remember in the PPT also I was showing now that optional, then optional of or like .get. Okay, this get method will give you that particular employee. Okay, so same thing, if you want to avoid this, same thing you can do here also, like instead of optional you can just return .get. Okay, and then you can just return what, you can just return this. Okay, this you can do, and in that case you can just remove this because there is no need of this. Okay, it will be managed by itself only. Okay, now because it is now not returning any optional, so you can just return this. Okay, so like optional ka you can use or you cannot use, but you know what is the good practice? Good practice is that you always you have to use you need to use like optional class whenever there is a chance, like yeah, it's may possible there is a data or there is cannot be a data. Okay, I think it is clear. So how you gonna use it, that is also clear to you. I'm just doing the redoing so that you can understand it better. Okay, so basically at first we are like defining this find by id method in our interface, repository interface. Okay, now in the service layer we are doing the get. If you don't want to do the get, that is also fine. If you're not doing the get, then what you have to do there, you have to mention optional employee. Okay, right, I think it is also clear. So I'm doing the same like optional. Okay, so and here actually you have to do dot get. Okay, I think it is clear to you the how you can use optional class in implementation in any like Spring JPA projects. I think it is clear. Okay, yeah, that's all for this video. I hope this video was helpful for you. Okay, and also I have mentioned one coding question. If you want, you can write down your logic algorithms in the comment section. I will happy to answer your comments. Okay, so yeah, that's all for this video. I hope this video was helpful for you, and if you have any doubts, any questions, please let me know in the comment section. I will happy to answer all of your comments. Okay, so yeah, thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.